There's a temptation when thinking about past attitudes and the way that people used to think differently to how they do now. There's a temptation that I think is sort of taught by our culture, by schooling and by the fiction that we read about the past. The temptation is to believe that the different beliefs and attitudes that people used to have in our own country, in our own culture in the past, sort of pre-sexual revolution, pre-industrial revolution, that sort of thing, that they were very sort of backwards people. They were very ignorant, and that if only they knew what we know now, that they would act very differently, and that we know so much more now. We're very enlightened, and I think it's a very self-serving way to look at the past, to believe that we have a much more enlightened view of humanity and equality, all these modern values that we have. And I wanted to make a quick video about how I think that's an incorrect way to think about the past and the way people used to think. Whenever there's a difference between the way modern people believe something to be and how the people in the past believed it to be, I don't immediately leap to the assumption that they were just ignorant in the past, but I try to look for reasons for why they had different attitudes and different beliefs, and how those beliefs sort of served that time. And often what you'll find is that there has been some kind of change in society, whether in technology or the organization of our society, that requires this change. The circumstances change, and that changes people's minds. And it's not that they were wrong before, but they lived in a different world, so they were kind of right. They had beliefs that suited the time that they lived in, not just because those beliefs were acceptable, but because those beliefs were sort of necessary and useful. And one of the examples that I was thinking about recently, I want to call it chivalry, but I've had someone in my comment section, if you're watching this, leave a comment. Someone in my comment section told me off for using the word chivalry in a sort of benevolent, sexist way. That is to mean a sort of benevolent sexism, a sort of treating women with an extra level of courtesy. I don't know what else to call it except chivalry, but I do understand that the concept of chivalry is much more than just holding a door open for a lady. There used to be much more of a culture around handling women more carefully, not allowing them to do manual labor, opening their own doors and carrying heavy things, and that still exists very much to this day, I believe. And I think feminists who believe that they're being treated equally, being treated just as a man is, are pretty blind to how much men go out of their way to make the world a little bit more comfortable for ladies. There still is this idea that the attitudes of old, that women were very frail and vulnerable, that they were very sensitive creatures compared to men. I think that's been put away a little bit, or at least we think it's been put away, and it's considered a very ignorant, backwards way of thinking now. Other than the obvious fact that the world that we live in now is much more intellectual, in the sense that we have machines and automation and lots of wonderful things that make our lives more comfortable, that take the strain off our actual physical muscles to do work. It makes women much more equal in an actual physical way. The fact that we have cars to get us around, we don't need to rein in horses. It is a different world now, and machines help us do the heavy lifting that used to be pretty much only doable by men. And so women can do a lot of the things that men can do with the help of machines, and men also use machines to help them. Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. This must be the part of the video where I tell you about today's sponsor, me. As well as being a YouTuber, I'm also an illustrator, and you can commission an illustration from me for as little as £12. To see what I've been working on, you can follow me on Instagram, and there's a link to that page in the description of this video. Let's get back to the video now, where I'm sure I'm about to say something really interesting. We do live in a much more equal world now. I think on top of that, the technology that makes men and women more equal also extends to birth control technology. And this is not my own original observation, obviously. Mary Harrington and Louise Perry and many others have spilt a lot of ink talking about the effects of the birth control pill and other birth control methods, the effect that this has had on society and our culture and our attitudes. Before birth control, women would be pregnant for much more of their lives, and that included many miscarriages and stillbirths, which is very tragic. But once women were married, family sizes could frequently go up to 10 or 12 children, and that effectively means that a woman spends most of her adult life either pregnant or nursing a child, and that does put her in a very vulnerable sort of physical position where being pregnant myself at the moment, I just think about all the ways that my body has become sort of weaker, like more wobbly, sort of just less control over myself in general. I need to sit down frequently, and even mentally I feel like I'm fatigued much more easily. And you can kind of imagine how when pregnancy was much more mysterious than it is in this new age, people didn't really understand what caused miscarriages, or what or even they wouldn't even know if a woman was pregnant. I think it would be probably not talked about until more traditionally these days it's until 3 months into the pregnancy that the woman is sort of sure that it's happening, that she starts to share the news. So you kind of have to imagine that every woman you meet, like yes, the married ones definitely, you'd have to imagine that at any point they might be pregnant. I mean, if they have an infant, at that moment, one that's just born, then they're probably not pregnant. But having an infant is very much, you're still recovering from being pregnant, and it's still a very vulnerable position to be in. And so you can understand how this idea of being very treating women very gently, as taking as strain off of them as possible. I'm not saying that it was justified or that I'm expecting to be pampered during my entire pregnancy or my entire life, but you can see how this culture would sort of grow up around treating women differently, not just because of their differences, but also because of the heightened differences that occur during pregnancy and the kind of slightly mysterious nature of that for people at that time, and the secretive nature of it as well. The not knowing if a woman you're interacting with might be pregnant. It makes sense to be to err on the side of caution, and to not discriminate against any particular woman. You would also want to extend that to women who are unmarried, who are unlikely to be pregnant, but also women who were older, who are frail in their own way. But postmenopausal women, you wouldn't like to be seen as rude and to leave it out. So you'd have to also extend extra sort of caution and courtesy to them as well. And you can understand how that attitude, that old-fashioned attitude of being gentle with women and sort of underestimating them a bit, would be very frustrating for able-bodied, energetic, sharp-witted women and girls who wanted to be treated with a bit more, let's say, respect, with be treated as a bit less frail. They want to be treated a bit more like a man. You can understand why they would think that, and why they might wish that all women were treated with a little less caution. I often think about the drawing room in genteel society when after dinner the men would withdraw to their room to have their serious intellectual discussions, and maybe they would talk business, or maybe they would just have some banter. But the women had to retire to a different room and have a probably a natter. You kind of imagine the frustration of the women who would find that a little bit tedious to exchange the gossip and the polite pleasantries with other women, when they'd like to join the intellectual conversation going on in the other room. And so you can understand how women who were, let's say, more intellectually acute and more energetic and able-bodied would fight for the equality of the sexes. And I think that is what that is what has happened, is that these kinds of women have always led the charge in terms of fighting for equal treatment. Anyway, just thought I'd hop on and say that while I happen to be in a nice place to sit down for a while. I hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you again soon. Bye. There's a little plane going over. Can you see it? Where is it? I don't think you can see it. You can probably hear it though. Is it going over there now?